Sorry, hold on. Is it okay that they're like walking behind?
It's fine. I saw them. I was kind of smirking. It's cool.
So I'm just gonna like pause. Like, are they all done?
So I think we're
Okay.
good.
There's a whole other entrance though. Like it's all right.
So welcome everyone to today's Melanated discussion. As a part of the professional series, we'll be talking with Verjeigh to learn about her career, how she got there, and how you too can be a powerful melanated professional like her. So Verjeigh, thank you for being here.
Mhm. Of course.
Are you ready to enlighten the community?
That is a tall order. I can certainly share my experience. So just, I guess, to give you a little bit about what I'm currently doing, I act as a diversity, equity, and inclusion practitioner within big tech.
What does that mean? What does that mean in
What
layman's
does that
terms?
mean? I'm a program manager,
Okay.
and not a project manager. And there's a distinct difference in the organization that I work in. So a project is something that typically has like a beginning and an end. There's a
Mm-hmm.
particular goal or set of goals. You accomplish it and you're done. That is the project. I've gotten you from point A to point Z. You may iterate on the project, but ultimately it's this one thing, one product that a person is developing or a team is developing, one effort, one initiative. Like a conference is a project, a series of
Right.
podcasts is a project, A to B, right? With the program, it's like a suite of different initiatives
Mm-hmm.
or pillars of focus. And as a program manager, I oversee a stream of pillars or focus areas, and I guide the strategy and the vision and the goals, kind of seeing ahead on making sure we're getting to our mission. So it's more mission driven, making sure that we are advancing continuously, toward a better organization, a more profitable business, a more equitable and inclusive, working environment, specifically to speak to my space. So with that, I have several different teams and stakeholders. I have different interests, different levels of investment, different expertise, and they don't always see what the other is doing. Right.
Right.
So, and then you're also, it's fairly dispersed, meaning that they have different, how would I say, focus areas. Like I have individuals that are building out, technical products. I have individuals that are running conferences and events. I have folks that are, sourcing and engaging candidates for recruitment purposes. It's just a variety of different skill sets that doesn't see what the other is doing. And at a top level, as a strategic leader, I have to see what the left hand is doing to inform the right and make sure that it all is still getting us toward that core goal, whatever that may be. In my particular space, it's about creating a diverse working environment. It's about having an inclusive community across different ethnicities, genders, any kind of cultural background, and it's about equity and educating individuals on those topics. That was long-winded, but yes, that is it.
Cool. So you said diversity,
Equity
equity.
and inclusion.
Okay. So Verjeigh, how did you get into this career field? Like, does it require a degree? And if so, what did you study in college?
Yeah, so DEI work or any program management work doesn't necessarily require a degree. There are many different aspects and ways in which you can get into program or product management. I have a degree, however, in business, and I find that many of my counterparts have some type of business degree. So that's a common thread, especially when you talk about larger organizations. It tends to be that kind of basic, requirement, is some type of bachelor's of science, bachelor's, of arts. But then, experience also can replace that.
Would you say that having a degree gives you a leg up though? So if you were coming
Absolutely.
in versus someone who did not have a degree, but they had some experience, let's say they had a couple years more experience than you do you still think that your degree gives you a leg up?
It absolutely does. I think
Okay.
it gives not just me, anybody, a leg up.
Mm-hmm.
There are many roles, especially when you talk about the type of compensation that you want to justify, uh, the level in which you want to have ownership, or how big of a project or business that you want to run, even like the trajectory of your career. Having a degree is incredibly critical. So it certainly gives me a leg up, if doing nothing else but opening up doors of opportunity, and then eliminating questions about my qualifications to a certain extent.
Mm-hmm. I
Right? You
agree
still
with
have to,
that.
yeah, you still have to show and prove, right? But having a degree is a very large pre-qualifier. There are certifications, as I was mentioning earlier, that can help. Like you can get your PMP and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
I started my career actually as a recruiter. So I don't have a traditional program management background. Okay, when I was, in early college, I wanted to be an international business consultant. I was interested in entrepreneurship, and that's what I got my degree in. So I went to Hampton University, my HIU, it's HBCU. So I went to Hampton. I got my degree in entrepreneurship, and really, what I had decided in high school, went into college for, was to be an international business consultant. I didn't know, and I do find myself now consulting businesses on international strategy. So I will say, ultimately, I ended up where I needed to be, but not in the traditional sense. I'm not a consultant at KPMG, or one of your, your big four consultant companies. And I would dare to say that I'm even consulting at a much bigger level and scale than if I was at a consulting company, because since I'm internal within an organization, I'm able to consult, yes, but I'm also an authority in that space, so I see it end to end,
Right.
right?
Right.
So I got my undergraduate degree in entrepreneurship. I did a small stint in the government, which wasn't quite right for me. I was a background investigator. That's a story we'll share for another day. It's amazing what your career will take you. So I was a background investigator for like a very short stint while I went through college, but then it just wasn't right for me. So I went out into the market and was looking for jobs, applying, even working for some temp agencies and things like that. And I came across an individual that was a partner at an executive search firm. And this partner was just impressed in general by, I think, the way I carried myself and the conversation that we were having about current events. And he offered me a job as a recruiter and recruitment coordinator within his executive search firm, which was based in London, but had an office in the Herndon, Virginia area. And I said, well, teach me. Okay.
Right.
Sure, partner of whatever this is. I didn't even know what executive search was. I didn't know what headhunting was. So I actually got my background in very high level, prestigious kind of headhunting of C-level individuals into technical roles. So I was looking for chief information and chief technology officers of major retail organizations, major banking organizations, and I was doing research and doing market availability. Market availability meaning like, where is talent, in what region, what do they and what are their identifiers, where are the Latin
Right.
women, where are the Black women, where how fast are white men matriculating through leadership, or doing some of that
Right.
research. And something I'll say about that is I was flexible. No, this wasn't KPMG. I didn't even apply for KPMG. It didn't resonate with me, I guess, because that would have made the most sense, right? I allowed my environment to take me into opportunities, and I took my kind of skill set and my focus area there. So I was flexible to try new opportunities to get to whatever my ultimate goal is. And when I saw something that felt in my gut that was going to give me the right experience and exposure that I wouldn't have had otherwise, I jumped at it.
Verjeigh, would you say it was easy or difficult? So after you were done with college, how long was it before you ran into this guy who offered you the job? Did it take you a while, or was it something that kind of just happened almost instantaneously after you were done with college?
Oh man, no. I mean, I spent a year at that job in the government being a background investigator, and I don't think I've ever publicly said that, but ultimately got fired. Sis did her best and it didn't work out. I didn't work out. I had to move on. Okay. It wasn't right for them, wasn't right for me. So then I was like, I was not working at the time, but I still had passion and desire. I had a little bit, whatever chip that I had on my shoulder got knocked off fairly aggressively. So I was actually in a state of where I was like sinking deep into, I failed, right? My life is over. I can't believe I lost my first job. I got all these student loans. What am I going to do? And here came this opportunity. And it wasn't a saving grace, it was an opportunity. And I could stay and wallow in what didn't work. And at the time that I was coming out of school, many of my peers were coming out of school, weren't able to get jobs at all, were going back to live with their parents. The job market just was not there,
Right.
right? This is like
Mm-hmm.
2010 that I graduated. The job market was not there. So we all had to be a bit flexible and rethink how we were approaching things and what was our ideal career going to look like. So it took me a year and a half before I found this first role. I stayed there for a year and a half, and then they end up uprooting our DC office, and they're like, "Come move to New York." And I love New York. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to get attacked, by anybody that's a lover of New York. But I'm not moving to New York. Through all of this, life is happening. I've got married. I had my first daughter, and by the time they wanted to pick up and move, I was now pregnant with my son, and they
Yeah.
said, pick up and move to New York. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that. So then, and this is sales, is consultancy. It's not corporate, right? So it's sometimes easier to go from one major corporation to the next corporation. I wasn't there yet in my career. So the path of what was next for me after being with this private international company is like, where do I go? How do I even explain what I'm doing? And nobody wakes up and says, I want to be a headhunter or I want to be a recruiter, especially then. People were like, "What are you? What do you do?" And it's like, I hire people. I help people get jobs. I help employers find employees. Like
Right.
nobody explains that. I think now it's a lot better known because individuals are now more agents of themselves, managing themselves through their career. But you know, now 11 years ago, that wasn't necessarily a thing. I'm aging myself, but that wasn't a thing. But anyways, I went from that headhunting firm to maybe two other agencies where
Mm-hmm.
I leaned in, and I landed my first corporate internal recruiting role, still a recruiter.
What year
Still
was
a,
that?
in corporate, I was 2015,
Okay, so 5
2015,
years out of college then.
5 years out of college, yeah. So
Okay.
there's some timeline there. So once I gained that corporate role, it opened up my opportunities immensely being
Mm-hmm.
at a Fortune 100 organization. And this was in the hospitality industry. So it's one of the top hospitality organizations that I was working in, doing executive search within their framework. And I got a call from my first big tech
Yeah.
organization. And when you think about big tech, right, your Googles, your Amazons, your Facebooks, even your Microsoft, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, and all of the time that I spent recruiting, and you set up this this cheat sheet, and it's like, what companies does the employer want me to go recruit from? And there was always these top 10 companies, and
Mm-hmm.
the big tech sat right there. So I said, if I go to big tech, it's going to be the Harvard degree I never got. It is
Mm-hmm.
going to be the PhD I haven't started yet, because it's going to give me that stamp of approval.
Yeah.
And I knew that because I had seen other people be given opportunities and take advantage of very small stints at these big tech organizations to double their salary, to greatly increase their titling because they learned so much while they're there and the market appreciated it. So then I move into big tech. I'm still in recruiting. While I'm in that role, I then start to matriculate into the program management space.
Nice. So, Verjeigh, branching off of that, the recruiting space, and then also going into your program managing space, what type of job? So, if someone was watching this, they're like, okay, I like what Verjeigh is talking about. I might want to look into that. What type of
Mhm.
job should someone be looking for? Like, what are some keywords that you would find in like a job title? Because a lot of times these job titles are not what you're actually doing at times.
Mhm.
So, for your recruiting role, what should somebody be looking up? Recruiting coordinator, is there different words, sourcer, and then for your program management role, what type of job title should they be looking up keywords so they know that they're looking for the right thing or applying to the right thing?
Yeah, so recruiting and program management is very, very different, right? So I'll start with recruiting. So there's tiers to recruiting. So entry level, from like a more administrative side, where people can really get their foot in the door with zero experience and likely zero degree, right? Would be a recruitment coordinator. A recruitment coordinator reaches out to candidates, gets the schedule right, and they typically promote into what is called a sourcer role. The sourcer is the person who does the research to find the candidates, is the person who's reaching out to, all of us on LinkedIn to offer us a job. So that's a sourcer role, recruiter role. So you can look for recruitment coordinator. It has an administrative component to it. And then you can look for that next step, which is like sourcer or just general recruiting role. After that, you'll see other titles like full life cycle recruiter, and that means that you deal with the candidate end to end, where I'm engaging with the candidate, I'm seeing them through the interview process, and then I'm making them a compensation offer at the end. That's a more advanced recruiter. When you talk about more kind of high level executive type of hiring, where you're hiring individuals typically that are director or above, and really it's kind of the C-suite. You look for executive recruiter, headhunter is another title, and a keyword that you would search for to like find recruiting based type work is talent acquisition. That's the
Okay.
official and more corporate word for it, right? You search talent acquisition. That means that there's an organization that builds out talent for whatever
Right.
company that you're looking for. So if you're going in to do recruitment work, especially in corporate, you want to be part of a talent acquisition organization. So that's a little bit about the recruiting side. Did you want me to hop over into the program management side? Because that could be a whole slew of things.
Well, specifically for what you do,
Yeah.
what
So
would it look like?
I think
Keywords.
I work in a really special space, right? So
Okay.
diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's kind of this, when you think about recruitment, it has a lot of HR focus, right? So me being a DEI program manager, I am that, but I have a specific specialty and expertise in talent acquisition, right? So things that you would look for if you wanted to specifically help talent manage for diverse candidates. And diversity can be termed as a number of different things. Diversity is not a person, but diversity is a concept, right? Diversity is a set of perspectives that's inclusive of all, right? But typically you're looking at marginalized communities. So you'd be looking for things that say like diversity program manager. I particularly am a diversity business partner, which is similar to an HR business partner. I am a program manager of diversity recruitment is another title. Like diversity recruitment is a keyword. A DEI or diversity, equity, and inclusion business partner is another word for it. But I would stick around program. Like it's not like diversity work is not really ever a project. It is always a program. There's always a suite of things that are being done. You'll also
Right.
find like diversity event management. Typically means like diversity conferences, which are
Okay.
fun. It's the like those are fun roles. I have a young woman on my team that runs our diversity conferences, and I was like, you do all of the fun stuff in my world. If there was a point where that was all I did. And I was like, I really could do this for forever. Yeah, I hope that answers a bit of your question. It could be very varied, but using those keywords, interchanging them can find the right opportunity for you.
Yes, that does answer my question. So, once on the job, specifically doing what you do with DEI, what does the
Mhm.
day in the life look like? How much of your time is spent in meetings? Yeah, what does your work week look like? And is it a 40-hour work week?
It is not a 40-hour work week.
I know.
It is not. I think that's by virtue of everything that's happening in the world. So we are in, I can't even say post or pre because we're in it, right? We're in a current pandemic with COVID-19. We are in kind of a racial and social injustice pandemic right now with the murder of George Floyd, the rising support of Black Lives Matter. So we're in the middle of it. So just based on virtue of what's happening around the world and happening in our environment and in this time that we're living in, I don't even expect to work, a 40-hour work week. But what's funny enough is I did do a time study. So if I work 40 hours a week, there's 4 hours in a week, right? I have, 160 hours then, to, I did that math right. All right. I have 160 hours kind of to work. And I was trying to figure out how many meetings am I having as like standing, yeah, meetings month over month. And 88 hours of my time go to meetings. So
Dang, so
basically,
a little more than half of your time is spent in meetings.
yes.
Yeah.
So a little bit more of my time is left to me. The reason why, though, is in my particular role, I am. and I say this confidently, a strategic leader, meaning that I'm an authority in my space and that my opinion is what's driving kind of what we're moving forward, how we're setting goals, how we're running our programs. So meetings and keeping everybody organized is a key part of my role and my responsibility. So I should be in meetings because I need to be present to review program plans, to review
Right.
our status about goals, to update my appropriate stakeholders, so on and so forth. So like that's fine for about half of my time to be spent in meetings, but it's like, well, what do you do with the rest of your time, Verjeigh? I'm asking myself.
Yes.
The rest of that time is honestly spent, and I'll talk to you about the meetings because the meetings are really interesting and they're an interesting part of my work. But I'll just break it out to you. So about a little over half of my time is spent meeting with my stakeholders and with my team members. And I'd say about one fourth of my time, so a quarter of my time is spent writing documents. So there's this quote I really love to use, and I forget the author, or the owner of the quote, but it's, how do you know what you think until you see what you write? So within my organization, we are very much so a narrative type of space. If I have an idea, I need to write it out in a narrative document to explain what it is. If I have a strategy, of course, you have to write that strategy out to get buy-in from others and to share it and to drive discussions during these
Exactly.
88 hours of meetings that I'm that
Hmm.
I'm having throughout the week. So about a quarter of my time is built writing strategy for my team and reviewing the strategies of others and providing advice and guidance. So it's literally reading. It feels very collegiate. It feels very much so like college, white paper writing, researching, reviewing data. And I'd say the other portion of my time is spent doing more tactical things, like keeping my team organized. We have a calendar that needs to be structured. I manage a team now, right? So my team is called the Attract Team. We attract talent. And it's about meeting with them week over week to make sure that they're in line with their deliverables and their project streams, make sure that they have the appropriate amount of professional development as they reach their own career goals, and that I am kind of reviewing and working with them on how they're running their world of influence and their
Right.
key
So,
stakeholders.
Verjeigh, you mentioned strategy. What is your team strategizing? What are you guys writing about? So, in the DEI space, is it like what colleges you're going to go and recruit from? Or is it
Mhm.
like we want people from XYZ background? And how do we go about getting people from that background? What are you guys strategizing?
Yeah, so there are four key pillars of work that my team focuses on. One pillar is diversity conferences, events, and employer branding within marginalized communities, right? The next pillar is K through 12 STEM development, which is how do we increase market availability of talent in marginalized communities and Black, Latin, Native American, Alaska Native
Nice.
communities over years to come, not just for my
Yeah.
company, but just in general. So we have a stream that focuses on that and our investments there, and that also includes collegiate investments as well. And then the fourth or the third stream, which I think is really impactful, is candidate experience and candidate evaluation. And with candidate experience and evaluation, we're looking at things within our recruitment process and candidate evaluation process that might create adverse impact to diverse communities, meaning that yeah, it serves a purpose in how we evaluate, candidates overall. It may be a more efficient way for us to recruit folks. I think about like talent assessments and things like that, which is similar to like standardized testing, but at the corporate level, right? Um, does this thing that we have in our system more phase out diverse candidates more than the majority candidates, which is in tech, the majority is white, Asian, male. Right. So those are the three core streams of my business group. And then the fourth one is just recruiting operations, which is really your deep program management experience, which is like, how are we keeping everybody organized and informed? So across these streams, yeah, we're deciding what diversity conferences we're going to go to. Are we going to Lesbian to Tech, Afro Tech? How are we going to
Yeah.
show up? What are the images and flyers going to look like? Are we bringing celebrities to the show? Fun stuff. My favorite pillar, as I
Yeah.
mentioned, right? Like, are we going to have Common this year? One of my favorites. So we get to get them,
Yes.
hey, are we going to work that out? And then when you talk about K through 12, it's about being intentional and authentic in the communities. It's about creating equity and making some hard decisions. Like, are we going to go into tribal? Are we going to research how we can engage with tribal communities
Right.
within, their areas and provide STEM programming for their children? What does that look like? Is it even wanted? Sometimes we have
Right.
great intentions, but if your intention comes out to be a poor impact, you can't do it.
Exactly.
Um, right? So, and then when we look at candidate experience and evaluation, it's like we have an idea in our mind about how things work based on what we've experienced anecdotally. And a lot of what I do in that pillar is I look at data. I look at parity. Parity means like, is there equitable numbers
Right.
of candidates or things? Like, is everything happening in the same way for each category or each group?
Hmm.
So if I have women, if I have Black candidates, Latinx candidates, and then white male candidates, and I notice that we are screening out women at a much higher rate or even a marginally small rate. I don't really care if it's different in that stream. There's something to explore there, and I want to know why women candidates are not moving through at the same rate. So that's where
Right.
that pillar comes in. It's like there's something off here. We're not looking to create in diversity, equity, and inclusion work. I think a lot of individuals feel that it's a program or it's an initiative that's creating an unfair advantage for diverse communities, and that's not
Which
true
that's not the case at all.
at all. What actually is happening is that there's a majority population that has undue privilege or access in these pipelines, right?
Right.
So what we come in and do is we evaluate them to create equity, which means we just want to make sure that everybody's on a fair playing field.
Hmm.
And a white woman candidate might need a certain amount of lift that's going to be very different than a Black woman candidate or a
Right.
Black male candidate or a Native American candidate or a candidate with disabilities that needs certain accommodations. So
Right.
we have to look at this holistically. All right. And there's some lift that needs to happen across the board because the amount of oppression happening in these different groups, especially in the US, there are certain systemic things that bring down certain communities that don't allow them or don't allow them equal access. And because there's
Absolutely.
different levels of that oppression, we bring in the term equity. So my team across these pillars deep dives into why does this happen. We uncover the systemic issues that are happening across, and we lift them up. We,
That's
we
awesome.
uncover them, first of all. So we say, hey, here's the light of day. Here's what's happening. It's uncomfortable, but deal with it. This is the
Right.
truth. And these are our recommendations on how you can do better. Right. And,
Right.
and this is an appropriate timeline of where we expect it to be corrected. And then we track it along the way.
So, Verjeigh,
Yeah.
when are you guys the front end? So, the hiring, the interview process, do you guys also look at retention? Because I feel like that's a huge thing. It's one thing to
Mm.
get diverse candidates in the door, but if you can't keep them, something is still also wrong with the system, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point. So, what's interesting about the organization that I sit in is you have different diversity professionals or practitioners. I like to call myself a diversity practitioner. So you have different diversity practitioners that have different streams of focus. So as I mentioned, I'm on the talent acquisition side, and there's a life cycle in an employee's experience, right? So from the time you engage as an applicant to the time you move on to your next great career, retirement, you win the lottery, whatever happens that moves you outside of the company. We're going to keep it all positive here, why you might move out. And the portion of the candidate life cycle or the employee life cycle that we engage in is from the moment that you uh, not even are an applicant, because we're looking at you slightly before that. We want to get you to apply, right? So the moment that we're attracting you to be interested in Amazon to the point that you onboard, that's the spectrum of where my team focuses,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
But I sit in a center of excellence, right? So I sit in a suite of other program managers centralized over 4 major business units within my organization. And I have peers that are looking more deeply into those components in the same
Okay.
way that I discussed it for talent acquisition. So these are my pillars of focus, right? But I have peer practitioners, more senior practitioners, more junior, but I have another set of DEI partners that are
Right.
then looking at deeper into what's happening at or onboarding, looking deeper into the appropriate mentorship for diverse communities. And then you look at things like not only retention, but also looking at promotion parity. So
Yes.
parity comes across like, and again, it's not about getting um I'll just use the word, you have to use Black communities or Black people to start. It's not just about getting, the Black woman promoted before everybody else because we need to have proper representation. No, it's about acknowledging that there's something going on in our organization that is adversely impacting or oppressing this particular individual, and we need to
Right.
give the Black woman a bit more opportunity and press to be able to push through those barriers,
Yes.
because there are more considerations to them being included within our environment, to them receiving the proper amount of project work and opportunity to get them to where they need to go, right? So there needs to be additional support resources. It doesn't
Yes.
create an unfair advantage for anyone. What it does is it creates fair opportunity for all, because right now we all, I care not what anyone says, we all sit in an environment where privilege and majority representation
Yes.
outweighs anything, outweighs skill set, it even outweighs qualifications in some instances,
Mhm.
because just like there can be unconscious bias that negatively phases out diverse individuals or folks that are different than those that are interviewing, there's also the halo effect to that. Whereas if I'm meeting someone that went to Berkeley like me, that grew up in the same neighborhood that I went to,
You're
that
more
that I could,
inclined to,
yeah, this person reminds me of my son. I want to give them a shot,
right.
versus this person reminds me of this image I see on TV every day and I don't trust them.
Exactly.
So like it can happen both ways. So not only are we trying to counter the unjust and unfair stereotypes that come across on candidates and people of color, we also have to combat this like a halo bias that makes individuals lean into candidates that are actually rather mediocre because they
Hmm.
resonate with them. Like, no, we have to create equity across, and it's about creating fairness, and it
Exactly.
is fair. It is fair. So that is what I have the great pleasure of doing. But this is the
Right.
work. This is the work.
That's cool. So,
Yeah.
what would you say you like the most about your job, and what are some things you like the least or that present the most challenge for you?
Oh man, like I am such an ally of other communities, but also such a fan of Black and celebrating people of color and being a part of uplifting individuals, that being in diversity, equity, and inclusion work gives me the opportunity to, yeah, see behind the curtain and see the uncomfortable things, but also to be present in the moments of celebration and joy and success, and to also be a part of why that's happened. So the favorite moments that I have in my job is where I see someone get promoted, that is a woman, of color, a person, with a disability that may have had some challenges with accessibility, and had we not, put in the right, steps into place to accommodate, then they might not have had that same opportunity. So I'd say it's when I'm making impact, and even just in that individual person, I see the change. When I was a recruiter, I hosted diversity recruiting blitzes, which means you're bringing on a number of different candidates to interview with, a team in a 1 day period. And I did a very controversial thing that everybody was uncomfortable with, which was like, we're going to host a Black hiring event. And they're just like, what? I said, I'm going to recruit and source only for Black people. We're going to bring all of them in on the same day, and we're going to hire them. And people were like, but won't they notice it when they get here? I was like, they just want a job. Okay. Like, we'll deal with all that on the back end. If they figure it out, fine. But none of that matters. And I remember that day we had interviewed 9 individuals, mostly Black. We had made an effort to reach out to, to mostly Black candidates, and naturally who came through qualify was a diverse set of individuals, but much more Black candidates than we would have traditionally had. And of the 9 candidates, I think we had like a 60% conversion rate that actually ended up accepting.
Nice.
And watching those specific, we had a gender problem in that one, so it was all men. But anyway, we'll focus on that next time. But watching those men, all of them that came through, but watching those men come into that opportunity and then watching them matriculate through their career over a 3-year period can't be matched. My career moved on and did all the things it was supposed to do, but we have our certain instances where we cross paths and they're like, I remember you, you know, and I know that had I not in that position, well, actually at that time I had little power, but use that little power to say, I'm going to do something different and we're going to stand out on a risk. And then my peers, of course, and my supervisor support me and we're going to make a change here. And then I don't even know how these engineers have impacted our products or impacted the world, considering how large our company is or how many other individuals they opened the door for as a result of their presence. So that's my favorite part. Did you also ask me what my most challenging part is?
Yes.
Being being a diversity practitioner and being what many individuals externally will consider diverse is hard. Being a Black woman advocating for Black women in a room that's majority white or Asian or just non-understanding, just, ignorant to our concepts is difficult. And having to, in some instances, hold my personal feelings back to make good business decisions or to have difficult conversations with individuals that don't have a modern or I don't want to say appropriate, but maybe I'll say that an appropriate mindset around inclusion is difficult. It's difficult to
Yeah.
decouple who I actually am from who I am as a professional and the skill set and the level of control and discipline I have to have in these sessions
Yeah.
and the amount of grace I have to show folks. I don't always want to
Yes.
be graceful.
Right. In certain situations where grace is probably not the thing they should be getting, you still have to be that way.
You
That
do.
is difficult.
It is difficult because we have to treat everyone equitably, and we have to meet folks where they're at in a lot
Right.
of instances with the desire to educate and teach and upskill. And in a lot of ways, we're looking to change hearts. I'm more a mechanism person, so I believe in setting goals and holding individuals accountable and pushing
Yes.
toward that avenue. Um, but along the way, because there's so much pushback, you also have to help work to change people's minds,
Hmm.
like to help people understand, like, I understand what you've been told your entire life by your mom or your dad or what you hear at the Thanksgiving table, but
Right.
that is not what a Latin a Latinx person is like. Not everyone is first generation American, here, like,
Right.
let's like let's have this conversation and
Yeah.
like let's like there's a deep so I'd say that's hard. It's really hard and it weighs on you personally when the laptop closes and you're sitting in your house with your glass of wine, the conversation that seems so true, it floats
Yeah.
back to you. So I'd say that's different. It's difficult because you can't separate. I can't, run like a technical assessment and close my laptop and stop coding and that just be it, or work with computers all day where I don't have to deal with the opinions or the thoughts of people. All I do
Right.
is deal with people. I'm in HR. And
Hmm.
I typically will move away from saying that, but it's true. I'm in human resources. I have to deal with people, and people are very
Yes.
unpredictable. And honestly, people are very unpleasant in many instances.
Yes.
So, so that's hard. It's hard, and but it's growing. It grows me as a woman. It grows me as a mother. It grows me as a member of my community. I I've grown so much, and I've cried tears. Not tears because I'm overworked or because my company is knocking down the hammer, but tears because what we're trying to solve is
Right.
bigger than a company and a bottom line of profits. What
Exactly.
we're trying to solve is a world and global issue that doesn't believe that people of color are equal and equitable. And I'm
Hmm.
working into an environment where you can't talk about religion or politics, telling them, hey, you cannot be racist. You must be anti racist. You can't be the least racist. You must be against all things that symbolize racism. And in many of these
Right.
meetings, like, people question, like, can I even say the word racist? And I have having to push those envelopes as a Black woman is difficult. I will say this though, there's degrees to difficulty. There's a certain amount of privilege that I yield in my ability to articulate myself free of an accent and free of any accent.
Yes.
I speak in a way with a tone that is very familiar to the
Hmm.
majority group. It is natural to me, but it has earned me a certain amount of privilege. If I had a different dialect, that might not be the same. My complexion plays part into it. There's this thing called a pretty bias. I like to think that I'm a fairly attractive person, and it's not to stand on a pedestal or say I'm this or I'm that, but you have to understand in the level of what privilege you yield. And when you acknowledge what
Exactly.
privilege you have, you can take that privilege and use it to get yourself ahead, yes, but you can also use it to open doors and create access for
Exactly.
others. You can also use it to challenge people and say, you are treating me this way because of X. How do you treat others? And then to say, you wouldn't, I've had individuals say, especially in meetings where I'm having to be bold and I'm pushing for change, be like, I don't like the way that you're speaking to me. I just feel like you're way too aggressive. And I'll think back in my mind where I'm like, so our VP yesterday cussed all y'all out and you
Right. Was
didn't
that
call him
aggressive?
aggressive.
Not at all.
I haven't used one part of foul language. All I used was a very distinct and all I was very
You're being
confident in the
stern.
way.
Right.
Stern.
You're
That's a good
stern.
word.
You're getting
I
your
was
point
stern.
across.
So I have to ask them, would you say that to me if I was a white man?
No, the answer is no. You know
And it
it's
makes
no.
people question themselves. So you have to look at the degrees and privilege of which I yield over others and which they may yield over others. So a white woman in a certain room may be able to say certain things and to yield certain understanding and get certain empathy that I don't. A woman of a darker skin tone or that may have a New York or even a Southern accent
Right.
may not be able to come into this room and wield the same amount of power that I have, and we could say the exact same thing
Absolutely.
with the exact same baseline of knowledge, but it's going to be received differently. So understanding that is key to this as
Definitely.
well. Yeah.
So branching off of that, Verjeigh, can you give us an example of a time where you were faced with a challenge, a
Hmm.
person, and
Hmm.
you knew it had nothing at all to do with your level of intellect, your ability to do the job, and everything to do with you being a woman of color? And how did you navigate that situation?
Gosh, I've had that situation a few times. I have to pause because you can't separate, the personal emotions from it. So I'll say this. There was an instance where it was another thing I was giving feedback. So we were driving forward a project and we just weren't meeting the bar. Like we were not executing it well. It was unorganized. The communications were just full of errors. We just weren't doing our best as a group. And I had to be at a debrief, I had to be very honest about where we were at and how we performed, holding myself accountable as well. I wasn't, hey, I was part of the project. There was opportunity for me to help us do better, but I was being what we call vocally self-critical, which was also being vocally self-critical about my other stakeholders. They were not a fan, right? Um, and they use this particular term that gets used, I think, a lot with Black women, which was, Verjeigh is very aggressive and makes me uncomfortable. So those two words, I'm aggressive and I make you uncomfortable. One, I'm speaking about how we all as a group performed in this, how we didn't meet the customer's needs, and how we need to do better. I felt very strongly that had a white man came in there and said, we're holding the bar too low. Sorry, I got my hand going. We're we're holding the bar too low. We need to move better, move in this direction, moving forward. And wasn't open to people trying to make excuses for the poor performance. They would have rally cried around him. That is so great. You are so
Right.
using my same word, vocally self-critical. What recommendations do you have for us to move forward better? Instead, everybody was afraid to add to my commentary or even to respond back to me
Mm.
because they had this expectation that it would turn into an argument and I would lash out. I don't even lash out and argue with my friends. So what makes you think we're going to argue?
In a
Like
professional space.
we're having a professional experience. So what do you mean uncomfortable? You think I'm going to yell at you? I'm not yelling in this meeting right now, but just me using my power in this meeting, just me speaking passionately about how I knew I could have done better, how
Right.
I know this team can perform better. Rather than it being one to say we are more capable than how we showed up, they said, you are aggressive and you make me feel uncomfortable. And now I'm shut down and I can't have this conversation.
Which
Reported it
takes
to my manager.
which takes the light away from what you're trying to convey and turns it into almost like a personal thing. Like they're trying to make it personal and like you are attacking them instead of acknowledging that they didn't hold their weight and then they didn't pull their weight on what they were supposed to. So it takes away from, why are we not looking at how you didn't deliver results and now we're trying to look at me and say that I'm causing an issue here? Like to me, you're diverting from what is actually going on here.
Absolutely.
It's
I think
ridiculous.
it was the angry black woman thing, you know, and I
Right.
wasn't angry at all. I'm like, but I'm not, what do you mean? I'm using the same tone I always use, you know, like initially my feelings were hurt. I
Yeah.
was hurt that it didn't drive better discussion. I questioned myself and how I delivered information and wondered if they were right initially. And then I was like, absolutely not. I did the thing. I assessed what my privilege was. I assessed what their privilege was. I thought about how they would have responded had I been, you know, in another body and skin. And I
Right.
said, I wasn't wrong. No, like I was not unprofessional. I was not aggressive. I was open to have dialogue. Y'all were afraid. You all were afraid. You all were uncomfortable because you're not used to a person, a woman, you know, I think, you know, woman, particularly a black woman asserting her authority or opinion in a space where you wanted to brush things under the rug and keep on pushing to
Right.
push
I
and
think
keep
it's an
doing
issue of,
mediocre work. Go ahead.
right. I think it's an issue of an entitled person
And then it's
not
like,
expecting to get this type of feedback from somebody that they feel they're superior to.
and then exactly. And I think the energy that I felt was, how dare you have the nerve to tell
Exactly.
us what a bar is?
Even though they know in their heart of hearts that they were not upholding the bar.
Even though they
They
knew in
know
the
that.
written debrief document that we did not in any way near meet what the expectation and goal
Right.
was. Like, period, we failed. So let's talk about the failure. And anyway, so I actually had a conversation with my mentor, who at the time was a white man, and he said to me, and I actually didn't really take this, I didn't take this advice, but he said to me, but what he said was true. He said, Verjeigh, sometimes when you speak so confidently that it makes people question what they believe to be true. So then they don't speak because they don't want to be wrong. And he's like, what you should consider is waiting before you provide your feedback to allow other people to share first. In that particular situation, what he said was true because I observed it afterward and it was true. Um, for that particular situation, I don't believe that was the best advice because it wasn't relevant for the context. But what he said was true,
Yeah.
and it's more of a leadership guidance as somebody that's a leader. And I've worked with many powerful and wonderful Black women, Black people, people of color, and we wield a lot of power, right? People of color in general, right? You wield a lot of power and authority in what we say and how we do things. And when we are sure about something, we can say it with such certainty that it
Right.
brings people along. In a leadership position, that can be so swaying that you miss the opportunity for others to express themselves. So
Absolutely.
I,
I
from
think
that,
that's why. Oh,
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
No, 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 go ahead.
I was saying, I think that also sends back to some things that I've read up on or seen where the leader in the room, like maybe it's the director or it's the VP, waits
Exactly.
to give his opinion or her opinion because they know once they say something, everyone else is taking that as a definitive thing and is less likely to give their opinion or their ideas on something because the leader has spoken and now they're just like, okay, you know.
We're going
So,
to go that direction. But the
right.
leader might not have the best idea.
Exactly.
The leader wants to drive discussion. The leader is a person just like you. So what I took from that experience, one is people's reaction to you is not your responsibility. Don't internalize it. Continue to be you. And that's what I did. I continued to be myself. I was mindful though. I continued to be mindful and to use that practice, right? Of how are people perceiving me? being conscious of how I'm interacting, with others, not modifying myself, but being able to recognize, is this an area of growth for me, or is this an area of growth for them? Is
Right.
it, something I need to own versus this is something that they need to own. And from the ultimate advice that I got on how I can become intimidating in certain environments, maybe it's not related to me being a woman or black exclusively, but me being a woman and me being black gives me a certain life experience that I bring into my profession. So it's not
Exactly.
absent of that. It's not absent of it, right? But that's not all of it. But I realized that I'm a leader. So I am now conscious. I'm very mindful when I go into rooms now that I wield an energy and I am a leader. And as a leader, you want diverse perspectives. You want
Hmm.
others' ideas. So if you come into a room with your mind made up and you share it as if your mind is made up, you lose the opportunity to grow your idea or to change your mind from the perspective of others in the rooms that might not be as powerful as you are.
Or don't feel
Uh,
like they're as powerful when they do have the power. Yeah, so you have to
Correct.
encourage discussion before you actually give your opinion on what you think.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But anyway, we're all over the topics today. Okay.
Right. So,
Yeah.
Verjeigh, how long have you been in this career field?
Oh gosh. So I've been in talent acquisition for 10 years now. So 10 years of
Wow.
experience. Yes,
Okay.
yeah.
And so, what would you say is the earning potential? So, we talked about like coming in entry level recruiting coordinator and then moving maybe to a sourcer and then full life cycle and then moving into what you are now. So, if we came in entry level and we say the first 2 years, what can somebody guarantee coming in the door as far
Hmm.
as pay is concerned? And then once you're a little more tenured, what would you say the average is? So if someone decides they want to move over to this, they know I can at least make 50, 60K coming in the door. And then from
Yeah.
there.
Coming in as a recruiting coordinator, so from an administrative kind of perspective, it's
Hmm.
typically an hourly type of wage role.
Right.
So I'd say about, $45,000 a year. So that's fairly low, but that's a place that you can come in with no degree, right? And you're coming in more from an administrative perspective. You get into the field, you start there. As a recruiter, even right out of college, they do have some recruiting roles that take you right out of college, and you can go into it that way. And I'd say typically that kind of entry level role is around $65,000, and that would be base. That would be base. So let's say somewhere between like 55 to $75,000 would be
Right.
that first year base salary with zero experience coming into it straight out of college. Straight out of college,
Okay.
right?
And
And
then
that's
once
not
you get more
including any
tenure,
any benefits. So
right.
the overall earning potential, gosh, like, so you can continue in the agency space, right? Let's say you don't go corporate. You don't go corporate, you stay in the agency space. So you have like your base salary, which is around $50,000, $60,000, and then your earning potential, you can sell those vacuums and you can make $1 million. Like I'm when I was doing headhunting, one of the partners in our organization that ran recruiting for headhunting, I think he was like 4 years into his career. He in his W-2s, he was bringing forward $800,000. Your earn.
Wow.
So
Oh
that's an
my
agency.
goodness.
So when you're in recruiting an agency, you can make well into kind of the mid six figures and beyond.
Nice.
That takes an extreme amount of dedication and support. I'd say on average, a recruiting individual in the agency space that has their base salary and that is really driving in traffic can make
Hmm.
anywhere from maybe 110 to around 180, $200,000.
Okay.
So I'd say about five years in, but that is base plus sales, right? So
Okay.
that's base plus commission, it's variable, so on and so forth. And it varies by agency. But typically when you're dealing in the agency type of space, your base will typically be below six figures. And it's really that sales revenue, that bonus revenue that is bringing you that majority of income, which
Okay.
is up and down depending on the market. When you move into corporate, um, like I mentioned, you can come right out of college, you can make 50, 60,000. Well, what is it? Like mm, 55, $75,000 a year, plus whatever incentives that you may have based on your
Right.
organization. As you continue to matriculate and grow in your career, of course, your earning potential increases. Um, I'd say for a mid-career recruiting professional, that's like 3 to 8 years of experience, like the earning potential is somewhere or is up to around $150,000, $160,000 all in.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah, so it's good. And then when you talk about like when you get into your senior manager type roles, when you start getting into director type roles, people
Right.
manager type roles, and your earning potential increases. Me as an individual right now, I would, sorry, I don't want to talk about my personal number. It's
You
somebody
don't
that
have
would be,
to. No.
yeah, somebody that would be personal, somebody that is like coming into a space where I'm at. They should not accept a package below $150,000, a year, period. Like that is
And that's not your
extreme.
base. Are you
That's
talking
total.
base?
I'm
Okay,
talking
total
all in.
comp.
Total comp,
Okay.
$150 total comp. I wouldn't accept anything lower than that at all. It's already a low ball. But the earning potential for someone kind of, in recruitment that's a bit more senior, it just really depends. I'd say incorporate it kind of caps out at around $200,000 though.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's good
and
information.
program management,
Yeah.
it can go a bit higher because then you can get into director levels, or you can get into senior manager positions like myself. You can go into manager, you can go into principal levels, you can go
Right.
into then director type levels, and then your earning potential reaches closer to that kind of mid six-figure range, looking at $300,000, $400,000 a
Right.
year, especially when you're talking about all in.
Yes.
But oftentimes in big tech companies, you're looking at a large amount of base and then a huge amount of stocks. You have to consider that in terms of
Mhm.
your financial planning. You have to stay at these companies more than 2 years to really yield your best output. You can't hop from career to you have organization to organization. You got to stay and see that stock wheel through, where you're not taking advantage of your full compensation package.
Definitely. So, Verjeigh, we're getting to the end. Got two more
Oh,
questions for
so
you.
sad.
What would you give, or what is a piece of advice you would give to a younger you that would have benefited you or catapulted your career if you just had the information, if someone had just given you this piece of information?
Mm. Be patient and be disciplined. There were instances where I wanted to throw myself forward into opportunities that were already there, but I felt I had to shove my way through, and it created unnecessary stress and anxiety. And sometimes it caused me to put myself into situations I wasn't quite ready for, right? So I would advise myself to be patient with myself and allow things to happen. You can't force it. What is for you will be yours. Continue to do what is right. So that brings me to my second point of being disciplined. Be disciplined and be consistent. I think some of the biggest things that hindered me along my path was just being involved in everything. I'm going to do this. I want to do that. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. But if you do 25 things, how are you even going to do one thing well? So being disciplined and saying, this is what I'm working on, and I'm going to do this well.
Right.
Right? Because really, along your career, there are certain very specific things that you're going to do well, and those things are going to define your career. Doing 50 things mediocre ain't going to get you nowhere.
Exactly.
Doing 2 things superbly, people will talk about it for years, right? So,
I
so if I
100% agree.
yeah, if I had been more disciplined, I would have saved myself stress. I think I would have learned more about how to see things end to end sooner in my career. Um, and yeah, it would have just been better.
Okay. Last question for you. Let's say someone in college is watching us right now
Mm,
and they want to take the leap of faith, or maybe someone who is ready to switch careers is ready to take the leap of faith. So let's say they walked in the door tomorrow, Monday morning, and they're on your
mhm,
team.
mm,
What would they have to do to make you be impressed and be like, wow, like that person is going to go far? Like, how do they kill it from day one?
mm. Exceed expectations. Uh, what I found when I work with individuals that have impressed me and that have stayed in the back of my mind is when I ask them to do something and they do that thing better than what I asked. So we sit, we talk, and they set expectations with me. I might want more than they're willing to offer me. They're like, this is what I can do. And I say, great. Okay. I agree to that. This is what you can do. I agree to that. And then they come forward and they've delivered the thing that they said that they promised that they could do, or they did the thing they said they would do. And then they've done a little bit of extra. Maybe they did the extra that I originally asked for in the first place. I don't remember at this point. I've forgotten. All I know, all I know is they did the thing they said they were going to do, and then they went above and beyond that, and it stands out to me. It stands out, as well as just it being really great with communication, having, keeping people informed proactively. Like, it will go leaps and bounds, and it's an area that I even need to improve on. But if I don't have to come and ask for the progress on the status of your project or report, if I don't have to wonder what happened with, X
Right.
event or meeting, if you have proactively communicated it to me, then, I am astounded. The best thing any new hire, new employee, new business owner can do for their customer, right, is make their life easier.
Absolutely.
Yeah, when I think of
Well, Verjeigh has laid it out on the table. Whoever is watching this, no excuses. Verjeigh told you how to do it. She told you how to come in from day one and kill it. She's giving you background on how she's moved through agency space to corporate, how she's navigated some difficult situations with people, which you are going to run into. It
yeah,
is inevitable. And so she's let you know how you can be a professional, kill it,
yeah,
and be powerful and graceful at the same time. So get out there and do it. Thank you,
awesome.
Verjeigh, for your time.
Thank you. Thank you, Tiara. It's great being here.